Hello, and welcome to Husky Talk. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. I would like to thank our sponsors at Procyon Partners. Procyon Partners, they specialize in wealth management, retirement planning, and employee benefits. They are also one of the top 50 fastest growing companies in the nation. President Sean Rabinowitz, proud supporter of Husky Talk. We love Sean. We wish him the best. He's going through a difficult time right now. His son, unfortunately, has leukemia, needs a bone marrow transplant. They are doing testing at UConn. I encourage everyone to come out for it. If you cannot, we will put the link to the website where you can actually have a testing kit sent to your house. Quick cheek swab, mail it back, and you could be the match to save Ben's life. I would also like to thank Pete Finch in the Finch Law Firm. If you have had any type of personal injury, if you've been injured in a car accident, slip and falls, dog bites, always fighting with insurance companies, Pete will help his clients recover money for their most catastrophic injuries. And if you feel you've been wrongly convicted in a pinch, call Finch. And then finally, Bleeding Blue for Good. Bleeding Blue for Good, Mike Burton. Since he's been involved, we've won 7 games. We're bowl eligible, and we have improved tremendously. Transfer portal opens in 4 weeks. We need to raise money. Mike did it all on his own last year with 10 people. And we are seeing it pay off with talent like Skylar Bell, with talent like Darrell Robinson, Nick Evers. The guys that he gets are making a difference. We want to have continued success. Go to www.bleedingblueforgood.org and donate to football today. And that combined with basketball will put us in a conference. And now for the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, a legend, Mike Sasson, former UConn offensive lineman, and basically took care of me my freshman year. And I'm very, very happy to see him again. And he looks spectacular. He looks like he hasn't aged a bit. It's amazing.
It's healthy living, healthy California living out here. Absolutely,
healthy California living. That's what it is.
There you go.
Well, I have to say, you look spectacular. I have to also say, I thought I saw you in a newsroom working news. Were you ever working news?
Not necessarily. I've done a lot of stuff in media. I was in. If we're going to get into it, so basically, at one point, I hosted a sports talk show on cable in Pittsburgh.
I was
on the Fan in Pittsburgh, and also was part of a comedy morning show in Pittsburgh before I moved out here to LA. And then also I've been part of 3 podcasts. One was called No Restrictions with a couple really great comics out in Pittsburgh, Jim Kren, Terry Jones, and Mike Wysocki. And then I was part of my own for 4 years called The Mike Sasson Show. And then I was now I have a podcast out here with a local LA comic, Ron Bush, called Mike and Ron Here to Help, in which we a lot of different media jobs and all that kind of good stuff.
I saw your sports show in Pittsburgh. That's what I remember. You were excellent. You always provided excellent commentary. You were always entertaining, and that's where I saw clips of. And I believe I did hear you on the Fan because I thought that was so cool because that's everyone's dream to be on the Fan. So you getting that opportunity is awesome. And being out in California now doing comedy, I love it, man. I absolutely love it. And it's funny because we have a comedy club here in good old upstate New York, which you may remember from the time we went to the Buffalo Bills game. I would love to get you booked here. See if we can get you out here for a show.
Yeah,
we have Fat Cats Comedy Club. And
Was that at a Utica, Syracuse?
It's New Hartford. It's New Hartford. So
okay. Yeah.
I like a couple teammates have brothers, like Terry McClowry came in after you. His brother, Matt McClowry, he's a comedian. He's like open for Kevin Hart. He's done some big things. We got him booked here. I actually picked him up at the airport, brought him, and they took care of him. All the guys came in to watch his show. So I'm sure like Burton and those guys would do the same for you. They'd love to see you perform. So I will definitely
in beautiful New Hartford, New York. Yeah, we'll make it happen. Absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful New Hartford, New York. There's nowhere you'd rather be. But yeah,
can't imagine a better place in the world. No,
there isn't. There's only about 10 million, but we would love to get you out here to perform because you're doing incredible things. But to start back, you played football. I know that you're from Pennsylvania. I know that you're from a certain area in Pennsylvania. Are you technically from Pittsburgh?
I'm from a suburb that borders Pittsburgh. I'm a little municipality called Aspinwall, which is literally about 15 minutes away from downtown Pittsburgh. Okay. So literally right on the Allegheny River. So if you ever watch like Steeler games and you see Acrisure Stadium, that river that goes across it, you go up at about 10, 15 minutes, you'll eventually hit Aspinwall. And that's where I grew up. So, I mean, legitimately, I cross a bridge and I'm technically in the city of Pittsburgh. Yeah, pretty darn close.
And did you play football early on? Did you start at an early age? Like 7,
I
8,
played
9?
a little at the Pop Warner level. It's a funny story. You probably know this because of being a big guy yourself. They had the weight limits.
I was always on a diet. I was the only 10 and 11-year-old on a diet.
Well, I was, So what happened was I was 9 years old, first time playing, and they wanted me to play with the 14-year-olds.
And they were going to move you up to, oh my God.
Yeah, to go play, with 14-year-olds. And my mom was like, no, we're not doing that. Yeah. So then my first time then after that playing was in 7th grade. So then just middle school all the way up till high school.
I had the same issues. I played 9, 10, 11, 12. Then I had to play at middle school because I just couldn't make weight. It was like, I think it was like 148 was like the tops.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about like all the kids that played, if they were, especially the linemen, like you could be some good skill guys and everything like that. But I mean, most of the linemen typically didn't play in the Pop Warner because, big kids, big 8-year-olds eventually become big 18-year-olds. So, I can understand it. You don't want a gigantic guy knocking the hell out of another 8-year-old, but
no, they sure do. But it's funny now in New York, there is no weight limit. They don't have weight limits anymore because it's discriminatory against the fat kids. So now they let anyone play.
About time we had some civil rights for the obese. Yeah, way to go.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I
don't understand how we'd have any sort of how did they protest? I didn't think the fat kids would want to start walking. So I mean, there's got to be something.
I had a theory: fat people were going to rule the world someday.
We already do. What are you talking about? Everything is for the chubby.
Yes, it is. We're getting fatter
except airplane seats. That's the only thing. Ooh. That's the last frontier.
Yeah, that's the rough one to conquer. Unless you go on JetBlue. JetBlue, you get a little more room, but otherwise, boy, you're packed in. You're absolutely packed in. So you started in 7th grade, and did they immediately put you on the line?
Yeah. There was no discussion. Yeah, there was let's see if you can throw the football. No, it was immediately on the offensive line.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had a good punch. You were good. You were a real good athlete. Good footwork. Were you always at tackle?
No, the funny thing about it is the fact that it's very similar to how I became a center at UConn. Was when I was like 9, 10 years old in that initial like Pop Warner League. They taught us all how to snap.
How to snap. Okay.
So then when I got to 7th grade, I already knew how to snap. So then the coach was like, well, hell, he'll just play center. Because, I mean, it's one of those things to where nothing really starts until you can actually do the center the center quarterback exchange. So it's great if your offensive tackle is knocking the hell out of the defensive end. If the ball's on the ground, nothing happens. So they were just kind of like, so my 7th, 8th, and even my 9th grade year, they had me at center. And then eventually when I got to high school, there was a guy named Kevin Carrozza who eventually played center at Temple, who was already at center. So that's when they bumped me out to tackle. And that's where I played when I was my junior and senior year at Fox Chapel.
Yeah, because I couldn't believe that. I did hear the story that you came in at UConn as a center, right?
Well, we came in at UConn. Basically, Skip had it to the point where it was like we were just linemen.
You did it all.
And then we just kind of figured it out from there. Like that's one of the things about our offensive line was I coached offensive line eventually when I coached my brother in high school. And when you're trying to put together an offensive line, you're trying to legitimately put the best 5 guys out there. And so it was one of those things to where you go, okay, it's not you're a tackle. It's okay, you're best for the team at tackle. Yes. So I show up, and when I first got there, they initially put me at guard at UConn. Okay. And I played a little there. Then because they needed some depth on as a tackle, they put me at tackle. And then the funny thing is, my sophomore year, we needed a center, and going back to the training of being able to snap the ball, literally Coach Googs just comes up to me and I told him, I said, hey, in a pinch, I can actually snap the ball. And pre-practice, Googs brings Skip over and just sits there and goes, watch this, and I do a snap and goes up to Shane and he goes, how'd it feel? He goes, good snap. And they were like, oh, okay. And then 24 hours later, they were like, yeah, you're starting center.
That's unbelievable.
So it goes all the way to 9 years old, learning it from some yinzer to do it, and it goes all the way to college. Yeah.
I played center a couple games in arena ball. It was the toughest position I've ever experienced. It was so hard because you had a guy directly over you, and snapping and stepping and staying low, especially you being taller. I always like shorter centers. I thought it was
the funny thing about it is, like you said, I always found that pass protection was harder on the inside because everybody always talks about that.
Yes.
Pass protection is, you put the tackles, that's where the athletes are. And that's where the faster defensive ends are, but you just basically ride them out. And I always felt that was a lot easier than being on the inside where the guy could go either way. And if you get blown back, you're right into the quarterback's lap. So I always felt that the interior, and then again with guys like Aaron Donald and stuff like that, that's almost become more important because if you can get that interior push, then it's almost even more deadly than if you have that outside pass rush kind of guy.
I 100% agree with you, and I struggled anytime I had to play inside. Anytime I had to play inside, I thought it was much harder. And you're right; you're directly behind the quarterback. So if you get beat, he is right.
Well, your quarterback's directly behind you.
Yeah, the quarterback's right. Sorry, yeah. CTE.
Come on, Steve. Come on.
Yeah, I got to get with it.
Honestly, let me ask you. I'm if there's any CTE in my brain, I'm looking forward to it.
I know, right?
I mean, you talk about all these people worried about today's world. We're not going to remember a damn thing.
You're not going to remember anything. Everything's going to be new and fun, and
every day is just going to be a new journey. How were you when you were 20? No, I don't know. I don't remember any of it. That's going to be. It's a blessing, Steve.
You're going to meet new people every day.
Every single day. You're going to meet new people. You're going to meet yourself every day.
It's going to be great. It's going to be a great life.
Yeah,
but
I'm looking forward to it.
So that's right. Fox Chapel. Wasn't that a really good school?
No.
Okay, that was a bad
academically, yes. But football wise, we were the proverbial rich kid school. I wasn't a rich kid, but I was at the rich kid school.
You were at the rich kid
school.
So
we would be if you go to anybody in Pittsburgh and you say, oh, I have a buddy at Fox Chapel, that's like saying here in Los Angeles, I have a buddy who lives in Pacific Palisades. I have a buddy who lives in Bel Air. And so it's one of those things to where, I mean, and that actually kind of played into my decision to go to UConn, because we played at the highest level of Western Pennsylvania football. And especially back then, like I remember going to UConn my first year, and they said that, oh yeah, the state of Connecticut had like 9 kids go Division I that year. And I counted, I had 13 out of my section.
Oh, I know the state of Connecticut.
Yeah. So the thing is that like we had McKeesport that had Brandon Short, who played for the Giants. We had North Hills that had LeVar Arrington. Yes. We had Central Catholic who had Mark Bulger. So I mean, every school just, that we had a couple guys who played. I mean, we played Penn Hills, which was the school that produced Aaron Donald and Bill Freilich. They had 3 guys on their offensive line who all went to Pitt, and eventually 2 of those guys became the starting tackles at the University of Pittsburgh. Were on one high school offensive line. Wow, and that was me. So like that made me sit there. Like I had like some inkling of interest from like lower level, like MAC and kind of struggling 1A schools. But UConn came along and I was like, well, I have a better chance of winning there, which is why. And at the time they were telling us that we were going to be 1A by our senior year. So I thought, hey, it's a great school. They're building new facilities. It's going to be great. Coach Holtz had just come from Notre Dame. So I felt it was better than, let's say, going to Temple or a MAC school or something like that. So that played into my eventual going to the University of Connecticut.
I interviewed a couple guys from earlier generations. Hezekiah Faison, Lenny Dandridge was one of the running backs, and then Wilbur Gilliard.
Yeah, and I played with Hez and Wilbur.
As far back as when they were getting recruited, they were being told the same thing. Like, we're going 1A, we're going to the Big East, and it's going to happen by yourself.
I saw the blueprints. And they told me where the stadium was going.
It was going to be on campus?
It was going to be behind Jungle.
And because I know they complained about the traffic, that was a big thing.
Okay, let's get into that. So basically, what happened was, so I said point blank to Coach Holtz when I was getting recruited. The plan was, so my freshman year was 1995. The plan was that we were going to be redshirt. I was going to be redshirted in 1995. 96 was going to be our last year in FCS 1AA. Then 97 and 98 were supposed to be our transition years into that. And then 99 was supposed to be the first year of the stadium and the first year in the Big East. And that would have been my 5th year senior year.
Correct.
Now, what happened was in 96, there was a governor in Connecticut named John Rowland.
The guy that was corrupt.
Yeah. Well, he's a politician in Connecticut. Of course, he's corrupt.
They're all corrupt.
Yeah. The ones that aren't corrupt are the ones that are weird. So the thing is that he was running for re-election in 96. And this was during the middle of like the Clinton boom era, and everybody was doing great in Connecticut and making lots of money. And everybody loved John Rowland. He was going to win by a billion votes.
I know.
So what happened is the only thing that the Democratic challenger could come up against him was the fact that he was wasting taxpayer money on things like building stadiums and going 1A and all this other kind of stuff. Really? So he legitimately, running up to the 96 election, which would have been like November of 1996, basically was like, no, we're not going 1A. I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have any plans for that. That's not going to happen. So that delayed it enough to where then it knocked it back a couple years. And that's why everything got delayed a year or two, to where that time frame was just pushed up a couple years. But yeah, it was supposed to happen very early, which is why one of the reasons why the 98 team was so good. Those were kids that were supposed to be 1A. Those were kids that we were expecting to be playing Pitt in West Virginia and Miami at that point. Yeah. So we were able to go in, because before I got there, Western Pennsylvania was not a place that UConn really ever went into. Right. And Coach Holtz went into Florida, and Coach Holtz went into places that had not really gotten, UConn had not really gotten those type of kids. And the kind of the carrot was, hey, we're going 1A. We're going to go to the Big East. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. And my recruiting visit in 95, you imagine like a really cool recruiting visit, was the Martin Luther King weekend, where it started with the UConn women against Tennessee at Gampel, which is, I just watched the documentary that that's like the pinnacle. That's like the moment when UConn women's basketball arrived. So that was my afternoon. And then in the evening, it was Big Monday, UConn versus Georgetown, Ray Allen versus Allen Iverson, where we had court seats.
Oh my!
So you want to talk about like showcasing what UConn could be? You see those two big things, and then you're meeting Lou Perkins and Harry Hartley and all these guys showing you the blueprints, going, and now this is what we're going to do with football. That's when I was like, oh yeah, sign me up. I'm in. This is what I want. This is it.
I didn't know that the governor had more power than the athletic director, but I should realize because it's a state institution. So, right.
Well, I mean, they wanted government money. And so really the state, as I understand it, they didn't really give a damn. This was supposed to be like John Rowland's kind of like, John Rowland wanted one of the things that was like, 100 years from now, they're like, and we have 1A football in Connecticut because of John Rowland. So he wanted that to be his thing. And the legislature, the state legislature, because they were just so, they were like, hey, this guy's really popular. And, again, how politics works, one hand wash the other. He's like, yeah, we'll get you your stadium, but you get me blah, blah, blah. And when he kind of dropped it and said, hey, this isn't something we're going to do right now, then the legislature was like, well, then never mind. And then they picked it up in 2000, and that's when they ultimately got the money to build Rentschler Field.
Well, initially it was the threat because the Patriots were going to move there.
Well, that's the other thing.
They leveraged.
That was supposed to be, it was the on-campus stadium. Yeah. Then the next thing was the Patriots signed the agreement. They were coming, and we were going to play in that stadium.
Yes.
Like that was going to be the UConn football stadium, downtown Hartford, 70. It was going to be like how Pitt plays in the Steelers stadium and USF plays in Tampa Stadium. We were going to play in the Patriots stadium. And then when Kraft got got everything together, which hurts me to say this, I read Dan Rooney, he's passed away, but the owner of the Steelers, he was one of the major one of the major people that pushed the Patriots to stay in Boston. He actually had a ton of influence because of the fact of how much, it was the archdiocese and his background in Ireland and everything like that. He had a lot of influential people that he knew up in Boston, and he helped Kraft kind of move forward. So as a Pittsburgh guy and a Steeler fan, it kind of hurts to hear that, one of the reasons why I didn't get to play 1A football was because of, the guy who owned my favorite team kind of pushed him out of Hartford and kept him in Boston area.
See, like I always thought that it was Kraft using the stadium as leverage to get Gillette built. So it wasn't
probably a little bit, but I think according to Mr. Rooney's book, he didn't necessarily, he was kind of a newbie to the area.
Yeah.
And he didn't have as much pull. He was trying to use it as leverage to say, I mean, like any good businessman, he wants to have a backup to where if nothing works, he goes, okay, well, at least I have the stadium in Hartford. And also because it was close enough mile-wise, it's like, for instance, like San Francisco Stadium is like an hour or so outside of San Francisco. It's south. So they didn't have to say, hey, I'm moving anywhere, because they were still in the
New England.
Yeah, they'd still be the New England Patriots because they're in Hartford as opposed to Boston. So that's why he put it in Hartford, because he was close enough to where he could just sit there and say, build it there. But yeah, that was the other play that would ultimately have made it that I could have played 1A football.
Because they told us that when we were being recruited, the same thing, the Patriots were going to come there. And I didn't know, I knew it was signed and sealed, delivered, and then all of a sudden they backed out. And
they found some loophole to where the whole point was they needed the stadium done by a certain date. And because they did like some environmental studies of the land and found that they had to like clean it up, that they wouldn't have met that date, that gave him the out to be able to go someplace else.
Because I actually had Randy on the podcast, And I said, it's admirable when Randy came in to get the stadium built, and he got the indoor facility built within 5 years, and he was 40 years old. For a first-time head coach being that young, being able to get two of those things accomplished, I just thought.
Well, he had a lot of help from the Burtons and the, and the athletic. I mean, like he was obviously part of that, and obviously everything helped. But I mean, it's definitely it was a team effort to get it done, and also I remember talking again it was all about trying to elevate the State University of Connecticut, because if you look at it
altogether, right?
Yeah, I mean, because if you hear the whole story from people that have lived there for years, prior to athletics really kind of lifting the whole university, the University of Connecticut was akin to saying the University of Maine or the University of Vermont. Yeah, whereas now saying the University of Connecticut is like saying Penn State or Virginia or UCLA or something like that. And what raised that level was big time athletics, was Jim Calhoun and Gino Auriemma and all those kind of guys. And that's one of the reasons why the football program is so important, is that, and we were all following the conference realignments and everything like that. You're not going to be able to sustain a major athletic program long term unless you get football right, unless you get to a point to where it's respectable, to where you can, because again, that's where the money is. And if you're going to pay Hurley the money he needs and the successor to Gino Auriemma for what they're going to need and all this other kind of stuff, you're going to need, the entity that drives the boat, football, to be right, which is why it was critical for, Mike to get the like you talked about, the NIL going and the respect there. Because I've read so many articles where they state that the reason why UConn's not in a major conference is football. It is commitment to football viability. That's every time they read about it. That's like, yep, every other sport is as good as any in the country. Football viability, football, all that kind of good stuff.
You're 100% right, because football drives the revenue. And this is going to be the first year that schools will be able to pay out that television money. So each school in the Power Five, they're going to get $20 million.
Power 4 at this point, Coach.
Well, the Power 5, right? Power 4.
Where's the fifth?
Well, the Pac-12 will eventually.
You really think they're going to be? I mean, obviously, a lawyer is going to try to fight to keep that.
No, it's going to be the Power 4.
It's
You're
Power
right.
4. Yeah, Well, the funny thing is, at one point it was the Power 6, and then it was the Power 4, and now, that's the real interesting thing is, if Florida State and Clemson. I mean, realistically, what teams that are not in one of those two huge conferences, Big Ten and SEC, are left? Basically, Clemson, Florida State, and Notre Dame. If those three found a home in one of those two conferences, the ACC essentially becomes, they become a glorified version of the American.
They're in their Group 5. Yeah,
they're because that's how. Again, corporate America, everything like that. It's about consolidation. It's about, keeping more money because there's now private equity getting into it, talking about creating a super league. Yeah, there's a lot of different things happening.
Yeah, the NCAA is losing all its power.
I don't even know what they do anymore.
I don't either. Charlie Baker, I thought, made a huge mistake when the NIL lawsuit made its way to the Supreme Court. And they voted unanimously for NIL.
I thought that's one of the things that for years they always said to him, "You'll lose this in court.
You're going to lose."
They should have settled. They should have basically said, "Yeah, you could do name, image, and likeness, but we need to regulate it and all this other kind of stuff." But they just dug their heels in and didn't go to negotiate. And then it went in front of a judge and said, having this $1 billion entity in which the people participating in it can't profit from it is downright illegal. Yeah, you're done.
Antitrust.
So it's the arrogance and stupidity of that organization, which good riddance that they eventually will basically cease to exist. Because I don't know what if you work for the NCAA, what did you do this morning? What is your power? Your whole point was to regulate the sport at this point. I mean, basically, you just put on championships. That's basically all you do.
You're trying to find violations at Michigan, I guess. That's the only thing you're going to do.
Yeah, well, good luck. I mean, I'm sure
cheating.
the all the stuff they're finding. They just you put USC on probation. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I saw that.
So yeah, all it's good organization. Hope they're all enjoying their $500,000 salaries.
And Harbaugh got in trouble and he leaves and nothing's going to happen. It's hilarious.
Yeah, he's sure if you went to a Chargers practice, he'd be really concerned.
I know. But wow, that's crazy to think about. And you're 100% right. One of my other co-hosts on the other shows I do thinks the NCAA will cease to exist within 5 years. He said there will be no more NCAA.
Again, if they become what they should become, which is essentially
nobody can
college football right now. If you look at it, the biggest entity in sports is the National Football League. The next biggest is college football.
It's college football.
If they were to consolidate the teams that really drive the revenue, the teams that really get the eyeballs, that really move the needle into one single entity and negotiated it as one thing
for TV,
then and they would get NFL level money.
They would. They would.
That's the $100 million question is what is college football going to look like when it essentially just becomes NFL junior real?
Yeah. That's what it's turning into.
Yeah, but that's one of the things everyone's like, oh, well, these guys are getting paid. And I'm like, wink, wink, nod, nod. They've been getting paid for a while.
Yeah, it's been going on for
I love that it's like, how's it going to affect recruiting? Go check the recruiting rankings. It's the same 10 teams that have been recruiting well for the last 40 years. Yeah. All of a sudden they've got great NIL. Maybe they had great NIL for a while now. Alabama. I'm sure all those young kids in California, New Jersey really just love the food in Tuscaloosa. They really enjoyed that. They really loved that trip down there. There was nothing else that was happening.
No, Reggie Bush and his family, they just happened to move out to California and find a place.
Well, he lived in San Diego, but the house that he bought in San Diego was probably something that you couldn't get as a, in a, with a part-time job, distributing newspapers. Yeah.
Yeah. Which his family lived in. Yeah. It was
Which I'm all for. How much money did he make, the University of Southern California? I went to 2 games this year. It's an 80,000 seat stadium. They have luxury suites. They have all that kind of stuff. He built that. They're still walking around in number 5 jerseys.
Absolutely.
And he wasn't supposed to take any piece of that.
And I can't remember if they gave him back his Heisman Trophy.
They did. You go to the stadium now. They officially gave it back to him, and now they do honor him in the stands, which again proves the NCAA. They just were like, yeah, we can't justify this, and so kind of went from there.
Yeah, I had always wished that the NIL, if Charlie Baker had just put a salary cap on it, said $2 million.
Well, the only entity that could possibly do that would be the conferences themselves. But the problem is if let's say the Big Ten puts it at 20 million, then the SEC knows what to go at. I think the future is flat out like you're a 5-star kid, because if you look at it, the SEC has aligned itself with Disney, which is ABC and ESPN and all that kind of stuff. And the Big Ten is aligned themselves with Fox. So essentially what you've got is 2 media entities, and Texas versus Georgia is a television show. So if you're going to be a main person on a television show, you get compensated by Disney. So I could see Disney flat out going to some 5-star quarterback and saying, you're going to sign a 2 or 3 year deal. You could pick whatever SEC school you want. We prefer it be a name brand like Georgia or an Alabama or a Texas or something like that, because that drives eyeballs. But we're going to sign you to a 2 or 3 year deal, and that'll make it a little bit better. Because I don't understand. Because right now it's basically just year in, year out. You get paid or you don't get paid. Where if they could sign contracts and say, okay, this is a guaranteed 3 year deal, this is a guaranteed 2 year deal, and just have kids, negotiate and work it from there.
Well, that's the one thing Burton has done and done well. Every kid who gets paid is on a contract. He has them have representation and a lawyer look it over. They know their responsibilities and they know what they're going to get paid weekly in each year.
But it's not a UNLV thing where the kid gets out and hasn't been paid at all.
I recruited him too, by the way. Great kid.
Should have been paid. He was worth it. He had him in the top 25.
The casino guy wanted to pay him. They wouldn't let him. There was one of the casinos that wanted to pay him, and
$100,000 to one of those casino magnates that he has that in his shoe. What are you talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe, like, I knew that there was a problem, but I can't believe there was that much of a discrepancy.
Well, let me ask you a question. The other rumor was that some SEC or Big Ten school went up to him because if he'd have played one more game, they would have redshirted him and said, hey, if you basically don't play for the rest of the year, you were paying $100,000, you'll get $1 million or $2 million to go to Auburn or go to someplace like that. So he pulled they're not paying me card, and then scoots, and now he's going to miraculously end up at a Georgia next year or something.
I didn't even think of that. Wow, you're right, because there's no regulation on communicating with them. You can communicate,
or you just go through the agent, or you go through his high school coach, or you go around it.
Yeah, they all have agents. They all have third parties. Like because Syracuse, we were so bad for so long. I would always say, if I was Dino Babers at the time, I would go and look at Alabama, who their third string quarterback was, and say, hey, you want to come here and start? We'll pay you. That's how you get.
That's one of the reasons I think that NIL has been a boom to college football. Is that, think about as a UConn fan. Last year, we were if it was just normal recruiting, there's a chance that maybe we would have gotten a couple good high school kids. Maybe we'd have gotten a transfer or two from whatever. But the ability to completely remake the roster and go from a team that won 3 games to now 7 games. You want to talk about the 98 team? They have an outside chance if they can beat Syracuse to match the 10 wins from the 98 team if they can win their bowl game and everything like that. So to do that in 1 year definitely keeps the interest up. And also, if you're a kid, instead of basically sitting around and waiting for 4 years to maybe be the starting quarterback at Ohio State, you go to a place like UConn, you play, you've got your exposure. It's a place that's produced NFL players, and you get a little bit more money and a little bit, all that kind of good stuff. So I actually think it's been a boom. I think the fact that they stopped it for so many years, this in the playoff, was completely just asinine.
It was. And I know some schools, like some of the MAC schools, like Kent State, Miami of Ohio, they tell kids, come here, play for a year, play for 2 years. If you get an opportunity to transfer up, we'll let you go. And that's how they're doing it.
My brother is an offensive line coach and the assistant head coach at Pittsburgh Central Catholic. And one of the things that he finds interesting is the fact that because he's been doing it for 20 years, and so he knows that, okay, this kid 10 years ago would have been a Pitt or a Syracuse kid, is now looking at MAC schools. And this kid a couple years ago that would have been a Penn State kid is now looking at more West Virginia, because the thing is that it's a trickle down, because if you give a scholarship to a transfer, that's one you don't give to a high school kid.
Absolutely.
So now the whole thing is, if you're a high school kid, you need to more or less be somebody that a college believes can play within 12 months. They'll give you 1 year, but you have to be able to play. They have to foresee it that you can play by your true sophomore year, or there's no point of investing in you, because the coach will get fired by then.
It was the least amount of freshmen that were signed last year. So then what are your thoughts on this? The NCAA increasing the scholarship limit from 85 to 105. That's the plan.
I think it has to be done, especially if you're going to run a spring where half your kids are in the transfer portal. Yeah. Or because how are you going to run bowl games? Bowl games are just going to become glorified spring practices.
Well, everyone holds out of them anyway.
Yeah, but that's the point. If you have 105 kids, then you can at least field a team.
Yes.
So
105 full scholarship. Yeah.
So, and I don't know. My big thing is more opportunity and more money for kids is never a bad thing. I remember when I played, I could not rub 2 nickels to rub together. It was a stressful time. Yeah. And so even if let's say, for instance, back when I played, if you would have said, hey, Mike, you're going to make $1,000 a month, that would have changed my entire outlook of how I lived at the University of Connecticut. To be able to go out, to be able to buy a new pair of shoes, to be able to fly home if I wanted to go, would have changed everything.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, we got $20 every Thursday, and $1,000 a month
per diem, that envelope. That was just such a gift. Getting that money on the bus. Oh,
I got
that was such a happy moment when the guy was walking around with the per diem. Just hey, here's $20 for sitting on a bus. That was just such a moment of like, yes, I'm in a good place in life.
Yes. And I remember when the guys would wait to get their Pell Grants. That was the other time. They couldn't wait to get their Pell Grants.
Oh, Pell Grant weekend was a great party weekend.
Yes, Pell Grant weekend, because the thing was, I remember they couldn't keep any of the money. They had to show that they spent it all. Like, they weren't allowed to put it in their bank account and keep it forever. They had to show that whatever they were given, it was spent. So they would do massive parties, shopping.
That sounds like how the government, that sounds like how the Army works. Like, you have to spend the money. So like in the Army, they have the most amazing New Year's Eve and Christmas parties because they have to spend the money. And in college, you're encouraging. That's the thing. You're encouraging these people to freaking party. You're like, well, you got $5,000. Might as well get a DJ. Might as well do something.
You can't save it. So do what you want.
Can't actually teach the kids to invest. You couldn't actually teach them what a credit score was.
Nope. Just go buy whatever you
spend. Not only are we going to give you money, we're going to teach you bad financial habits. So go ahead.
Yes, whatever you
welcome to college.
We can do. Welcome to life. We're preparing you for life.
Yeah.
You came in initially. Was the line coach Hudson, or was Googe there already?
No, Hudson actually recruited me.
It was Hudson who recruited you.
Literally recruited me. Like, he was my coach who came to Western Pennsylvania and talked to my dad and did all that kind of stuff. So Hud was my
he was a hard ass, but he was a good coach.
Yeah, I've listened to a couple of your podcasts talk about him. I think because I was someone that he specifically recruited that he liked me. Now, occasionally he'd say, call me a name or something like that, but I didn't feel any sort. Also, because of the thing, my high school coach coached at Pitt back in the early 80s with his mentor, Joe Moore.
Okay.
So Joe Moore's a Pittsburgh guy, and so Joe Moore knew of me. And so he kind of was like, oh, you're going to. So it was like Hud, Joe Moore, me. It was kind of a nice match and everything like that. So Hud was a huge fan of me.
Okay. Now I know you ended up at UConn. Were you looking? Or did you want to go to Pitt? Did you go to their camp? Did you do anything like that?
So the stupidest advice I'd ever received in the history of my life was from my high school coach. He stated, don't go to camps.
Don't go to camps.
Because they're going to want to see film of you anyway. Which, as a guy who coached in high school for 6 years, I literally would. That is the dumbest advice in the history of dumb advice. Yes. So, I took a couple, I went to a couple games at Pitt. I went to a couple games at West Virginia.
Unofficials, right?
Unofficials. Yeah. Basically, what it came down to with those schools were, they were taking 3 kids. I was their 6th kid.
That's what
I was the hold on, we might need you, kid.
Yeah,
and I wasn't having that, especially considering when I was there, Johnny Majors was at Pitt and they sucked.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a school that I was like. This wasn't 1980 Hugh Green, Dan Marino Pitt. This was this was playing in front of 10, 15 people Pitt. The funny thing is and I say this to Pitt people all the time, in 98, Villanova went and played them and put 47 on Pitt.
Oh, Villanova.
And that was the year that we were the New England champs. Villanova was like 500. So correct. I said, you're lucky you didn't play us because we would have beat you.
Yeah,
so that's one of those things where I'm upset that we didn't get that chance to go into Pitt Stadium and beat them. But yeah, that was so. Yeah, Pitt and West Virginia, the schools that really it came down to, because again, I didn't want Ohio came by, I didn't want to go there. Kent came by, Temple came by, Cincinnati came by, Tulsa came by. What?
Buffalo? SUNY Buffalo, University of
Buffalo? No, they were literally still like almost Division II when I was like they weren't doing much of anything.
They were on the way up.
Yeah, and but it's one of those things to where it came down to the 3 visits I took. My first one was to UMass.
Me too. I loved UMass.
Yeah. The second one was literally, again, it was University of Richmond. And then it was UConn. And I went to Richmond Friday, Saturday, ended the visit on Sunday, and then flew directly from Richmond to Hartford. I didn't even go to Pittsburgh. I went directly to my visit in Connecticut, and then took my visit to Connecticut over the Martin Luther King weekend.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's crazy, because that's highly unusual to do it that way.
Well, the funny thing is that the coach at Rhode Island wanted me to go to a visit, and initially he had just heard that I had left for a visit on Friday, and then on Tuesday called and wanted to talk to me, and like my sister was like on the phone with him going, Mike's still up at school. And so he thought that I was on a visit from UConn from Friday to Tuesday.
All the way through, yeah.
So he literally starts screaming at my little sister, that's an NCAA violation. They can't stay there for more than 48 hours. Yeah. So, yeah, that was a fun time. He's yelling at my 8-year-old sister.
Yeah, take it out on her. Oh, my God.
Oh, the coach at Rhode Island was a nut job.
They tracked you down. They found your hotel room. They
were furious. Yeah, they were. How dare I have fun at a school that cared about athletics?
Were you offered by the schools you visited, Richmond? And okay, so you were offered, but you didn't make the decision right there after the visit.
So I went to my visit to UMass before the Christmas break.
Yes,
and I had a decent visit with them. They were kind of UConn junior, in a sense of like Mark they were kind of going like, yeah, they got a good program. We've got Marcus Camby. They're going 1A. We're probably going to go 1A. So it was everything that they said was just like, we're going to do that too.
Yeah.
And then the thing is that I had made a commitment to HUD where I was like, I won't make a decision until I visit Connecticut. Right. And he held me to that. And then I took the visit to Connecticut. So then you want to talk about growing up, after my visits, I was in my weight room in high school and Coach Roof from UMass came by. And Coach Roof eventually became like the coach at Duke, and he had a great career. Yeah. Ted Roof,
yeah.
And
holy crap.
He was in the office, and I remember my high school coach comes up to me and he goes, Coach Roof from UMass wants to talk to you. And I go, okay. And he goes, he wants to know what your thoughts are about UMass. And I literally look at my coach and I go, I'm not going. And he goes, well, you go and tell him. So I walked into the office by myself, sat down. Coach Roof is sitting right there, and says, "So, Mike, what's your thoughts?" And I go, "I'm not going to UMass."
Yes.
And he goes, "Where do you think you're going?" And I go, "Probably UConn." And we just sat there, and he goes, "Well,
good luck.
Best of luck." And I go, "Thank you very much." And I just walked out.
Yeah.
And so then what happened, which it's interesting. The last thing that Coach HUD said to me, Coach HUD actually made it to where he flew back to Pittsburgh with me, and he was right next to me on the plane. So then we touched down in Pittsburgh. My dad's picking me up. HUD and my dad want to talk, so we go to this place that serves chicken wings near the airport and stuff like that. And so we have a lunch or something. And the last thing that Coach HUD said to me was, at any time, you call me and you tell me if you're a Husky. So, whatever. Next day, Richmond comes to my school. Richmond says, what do you want to do? I basically go, I don't want to go to Richmond. And he goes, okay, thank you very much. Blah, blah, blah. So now it's UConn. So then I told my dad this, and my dad goes, well, then go call Coach Hud. Now, I told my dad this at like 11:45 on a Wednesday, like night. And he goes, call him. And I go, well, it's 11:45 at night. He goes, he said anytime. Call him. So this is before cell phones. This is before anything. Yeah. So I had to call like the days in like near the airport, ask for Greg Hudson. He wasn't in yet. So I said, well, call him back. I'll be up for another like 15, 20 minutes. 3 minutes later, he calls me on the phone, on my house phone, and he sits there. He's like, Michael,